What's up, guys? Welcome back to a new video here. So today we had a major podcast drop between the president of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, and Lex Fridman, and it made a number of headlines. It was a 3-hour podcast. I watched the entire thing, and I'm going to give you the breakdown right now. Before I go any further, make sure to like and subscribe. It's super good for the algorithm, and Amazon links are in the description of products I use. If you want to buy it, use the link, and it'll help the channel out. So before I go any further, let me just say they spoke in 3 different languages: Ukrainian, which was translated for the most part, which I'll get into. Zelensky made it a point to speak in Ukrainian, even though Lex did not really know any Ukrainian. They both spoke in Russian for a bit. Mostly Lex was speaking to Zelensky in Russian and a bit of English here and there. So number one, I thought it was a very powerful and strong introduction from Lex. Spoke about how he has major admiration for President Zelensky, calls him an incredible leader, and it was very strong in an endorsement of Zelensky, which I thought was super important to speak and give his opinion on that. Again, Lex has Ukrainian ancestry, and he's from that region. Again, I thought it was a very powerful intro from Lex Fridman. Now, they started off by talking about the different languages they spoke, and I thought this was a super interesting point here. Zelensky said that he doesn't really want to speak in Russian. He'll let Lex speak to him in Russian, but he does not want to speak in Russian, even though he's spoken most of his life. The reason why he does not want to speak in Russian, guys, is because he says the Russians are invading us, they're attacking us. And the way he was speaking about Russia and Putin and even the population of Russia, there was a vitriol that he has for Russia and, frankly, a decent amount of their civilians. There is no question about that. And hey, I mean, can you blame him? His country is being invaded by Russia on the daily. Hundreds of thousands of his own people have been killed in a war with Russia. But I thought that was super interesting, the way he spoke about Russia in the beginning. And he made it a point to speak in Ukrainian because he wanted to speak in Ukrainian because it's a symbol of the Ukrainian resistance and a symbol of Ukraine in itself. So I thought that was a super interesting and symbolic point that President Zelensky was trying to make. And he also said he wants to speak in Ukrainian because, again, a key point, we're different countries. Ukraine is a different country than Russia. So by speaking in Ukrainian, it was, again, like I said, a symbol of the Ukrainian resistance, which is why he made it a point to do that, which I thought came across super powerfully in the interview. Now, again, I thought Lex conducted himself very well. He let Zelensky speak. Again, Lex's entire goal, it seemed, was to try and look for peace, some of which it just came across as naive in many aspects. But to be fair to Lex, he was very fair. He let Zelensky speak, and I thought it was a very informative interview. And it was a 3-hour interview, guys, which is pretty wild. Again, he brought up Joe Rogan, saying, "Oh, when you come to the United States, we should all go to Joe Rogan's comedy studio." I mean, come on, man. Seriously, you're interviewing the president of Ukraine. You're bringing up Joe Rogan, who, by the way, has shit and taken a dump all over Ukraine in the past few months. And honestly, the fact that Zelensky did not attack Rogan at all, and said he praised him for being a smart guy. It was surprising to see, and I mean, good for him. The fact that he feels the need not to attack Rogan, hey, good for him. But also at the same time, he's a smart person. He knows attacking Rogan could alienate some of his audience, which he needs the American public support. There's no question about that. Um, I thought they spoke about World War II, which I thought was super interesting as well. Zelensky, guys, he brought up how, and it was very clear what he was trying to do. He brought up World War II, how a lot of the reasons why Hitler was able to gain and get as much power as he did before he was taken out was due to the fact that there was a lot of weakness from Western countries. And he was obviously trying to draw a parallel by Ukraine and Putin and compare Hitler to Putin, basically. And hey, some people in the West would think that's crazy. If you're Ukrainian, you're President Zelensky, he is the Hitler for Ukraine. There's no question about it. He invaded the country. You're obviously going to feel a certain type of way about Putin, even though people in the West may think, oh, that's ridiculous. But for the Ukrainian people, there's no question. Hundreds of thousands of their civilian, of their population have died. So, of course, they're not going to like Putin. And for people to think, oh, we should just get in a room and just hash it out with this guy, that's not realistic, which Lex was trying to do throughout the interview. And I thought there were some other interesting caveats of the interview also. For example, when the war first started, Zelensky famously did not flee the country. He did not flee the country, which Lex himself has said he gives the president an immense amount of credit for. He also says the Belarusian president, Lukashenko, a staunch ally of Putin, and guys, Belarus is basically a proxy state of Russia. In fact, many missiles were fired from Belarusian territory into Ukraine on February 4th, 2022, when the war first began. And according to Zelensky, Lukashenko actually called him and apologized, saying, "It's not my choice, it's Russia's choice," which I thought was super interesting. this so-called staunch ally of Putin is apparently calling Zelensky, telling him, "Yeah, I'm very sorry that Russia did this." And he says many in the global South, for example, also say they think the war was terrible and Putin should not have done it. So again, very just interesting caveats of the interview itself. And he talks about how, in order to cut a lot of what he's trying to do, the Ukrainians' goal is to combat, as he would put it, disinformation. He says there's so much disinformation in the West. For example, much of these weapons, they're being used for corruption. What most of the money that's going to Ukraine, guys, in the U.S. taxpayer bills, they're actually given to U.S. weapons manufacturers. The money itself is not going to Ukraine. It's mostly money going to U.S. weapons manufacturers, which, hey, that's a discussion in itself. But hey, it's going to U.S. weapons manufacturers and then to make new weapons. And what the manufacturers of these weapon companies are doing is they're sending in the old weapons to Ukraine. So yeah, there's some money going to Ukraine in terms of aid, for example, but most of the money in these packages, they're not going to in checks to Zelensky. That's not how it works. It's complete disinformation by a lot of guys on the right wing, like Tucker Carlson, for example, and right wing, in many cases, anti or pro-Russian propagandists, which is a segment of the right, not all the right, but there are quite a few of those people out there. And a lot of people fall for it. There's no question about it. Um, and again, there is a hatred that Zelensky has for Russia. There's no question about it. There's no question about it. He has an incredible amount of animosity towards Putin and the Russian people. But I mean, I was surprised by it, truly. In terms of, especially the general population, for him to show that animosity, I just thought was super interesting. But is it really surprising? I'm sure a lot of people feel that way in the Ukrainian country themselves. Um, he praised Elon Musk, for example, which is not surprising, especially because, guys, hey, he's a member of the Trump administration, basically. He was on the phone with him before. So I just thought that was another interesting part of the interview, praising Elon Musk. And he also said that he does not think Putin wants to end the war. He does not believe Vladimir Putin actually wants to end the war, and it's just positioning for propaganda purposes. Is that true? I don't know. Clearly, when he invaded the country, he wanted to take over the entire country. Does he actually want to end the war, or is it for propaganda purposes to position himself like that? I don't really know. I'm not sure. I'm not sure there's going to be a peace agreement anytime soon. I hope so, but I'm not sure. Lex Fridman, for example, said he thinks that Putin actually does want to sit down and talk. I'm not sure I agree with that. I just think there's no evidence to support that fact. It came out the other day, guys, that the foreign minister of Russia, Lavrov, actually declined the Trump administration proposed plan for the security of Ukraine in a potential agreement. The Russians declined this proposal, which, again, it's very telling. And the key point that Zelensky was trying to make throughout the interview, guys, was that Ukraine needs security. So in any agreement, Ukraine needs security. So in a settlement deal, there needs to be assurances from the United States and the European Union that, let's just say Russia were to invade again, they would need security and to defend that. Because, guys, let's be honest, there's an agreement where Ukraine does not have guaranteed security. Hey, the Russians are probably going to go back in. Like, what would be stopping them? What would be stopping them? So I think it's pretty clear. Whether that means NATO or not is another question. I think that could be negotiable, possibly. But there's no question there needs to be security assurances in a settlement, because if not, the Russians will probably just go back in. There's nothing that would be stopping them, which I totally agree with. Anyone who would say otherwise is just being completely naive or being naive on purpose, guys. And Zelensky, again, showing a lot of praise for Trump, which I'm not surprised. He's trying to show praise for Trump because, hey, he's the next president. He's incoming president. He has to praise him. He wants to leverage his position into as most favorable a position as possible. But I thought overall, guys, Zelensky came across pretty likable in the interview. He just came across as a normal person. I really, which of course, again, that's going to be his goal to do that. And I thought he did it very well. I think he came across as a strong leader as well. It's going to be interesting to see how this all plays out over the next few months. But I do hope Ukraine, there can be peace. I do agree with Lex Fridman on that. I hope we can get to a peace settlement at some point and just end the killing, because it really is a brutal war, the likes of which the world has not seen in decades. So just a brutal situation going on there. But I thought it was a very interesting interview overall between Lex Fridman and the president of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky. So thank you guys for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe. Again, super good in the algorithm. And Amazon links of products I use are in the description. We have major things coming up over the next few months, by the way, in terms of special guests, major events, and major things just coming to the channel. So it's super exciting. So if you like the content, we got a lot more coming for you. So thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys soon. Thanks.